So this is the 2024 Lexus NX 350h luxury all-wheel drive. It's a compact upscale SUV that has more technology than a space shuttle. But before we get into all of the details, first a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Land Air Sea. Keep tabs on all your valuable assets from the palm of your hand. Remember, with Land Air Sea, theft is temporary. Visit landairSea.com to order your Land Air Sea GPS unit for your classic vehicle.
Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 Lexus NX 350h luxury all-wheel drive. Now the NX series of vehicles starts at $40,000 and our NX 350 here starts at $44,205, which is just $200 more than the non-hybrid version, but gets as well as rated for double the fuel economy. Now this specific car that we'll be taking a look at that has the luxury package along with a variety of other add-ons comes priced in around $56,855, and that does include the handling, processing, and delivery fees that are associated with these vehicles. So your experience may vary depending on what vehicle you decide to purchase. In this video, we'll be talking about some of the different advantages. We'll be taking a look at the exterior, the interior, of course, the powertrain, and then we'll take it for a drive. So moving on into the review, the first thing I want to show you are actually the keys. So this is your standard Lexus key fob that is of course included with the sale of the vehicle, but also included is this, which is the Lexus Smart Card key. Now this has been around for a little bit, but you don't see it included that often, so I figured I would share it with you. It looks just like a credit card. You can see how thin it is compared to the regular fob, but this actually works as a regular key for the car. So you don't have to take the fob with you anymore. If you want, you can take this compact card instead, which in the event of an emergency even contains a key inside of the card as well. So if I go ahead and push on this button, pull it down, you can see you also have the emergency key, so you can use all of the manual releases if you needed to. But this will work as a keyless entry vehicle and start the vehicle and drive it. And I think this is fantastic for whether you need to go to the gym or jog or whatever. It's just more compact in my opinion. So let's start taking a look at the outside of our Lexus vehicle, which has this particularly sparkly orange color, which looks fantastic in the Phoenix sun today. And this color is called cadmium orange, and it's actually a premium paint option, and it does add on to that total MSRP of about $56,855 that we have for our particular vehicle. In terms of the general styling, you can see it's fairly smooth. It has a sort of swept back sporty look, which is pretty nice. We have a big sort of Lexus symbol grille. This is pretty common on a lot of their various vehicles. No bluing on our badge to denote that it's a hybrid, which is a little bit different. And then we have some more added bits here, obviously some stuff for towing hooks, but importantly, one of our first luxury features that are optional in this car would be the 3 LED beam headlights. Now there are two different options for the vehicle, and this one just so happens to have the upgraded options noted by these 3 beams here, and of course you can see the daytime running lights up top as well with some washers just below it. Down low here we have these cool sort of flared out bits that do contain our LED fog lights that sit right in here as well. So lots of LED options that should be nice and bright, and of course should last you a long time, not really having to worry about replacing any of that. As we come around to the side, we have some of our first options that come as part of our luxury package. The first being, I want to point out the wheels. Standard is actually 18-inch wheels, but on our luxury model here we have these 20-inch wheels that are these premium alloy wheels that look pretty good, and they're finished in this silvery sort of graphite color on this particular car, and I think they look pretty good. They have a cool staggered look and they fit the overall design aesthetic of the car. On top of that, we do have these little plastic bits, which is becoming more and more common in modern vehicles, and in this particular case it just helps for the grand cost of things. If you want to take your vehicle off-road, if you live on a dirt road, whatever the case, this won't be a big deal if it gets scratched. It's going to be a little bit more durable than the actual paint of the vehicle, and it's a lot cheaper to replace should you have to do anything like that in the future. As we keep moving along the vehicle, we have some foldable power mirrors. Of course, these are power adjustable and also fold back whenever the car is locked. On top of that, we have some roof rails that sit just above here. They're finished in silver. You can see the access panels that actually let you remove them if you need to use your roof panels, whether you want to go camping. But of course, that will end up covering your moonroof, which is actually powered under there, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the interior. As we come to the door handles, these are a little bit different because the doors themselves are actually popped via an electric popper inside. So the door handles are a little bit different, but you do have your standard sort of keyless entry that works just like any other Toyota or Lexus product. But of course, there is a manual release should you have to do it, and you can get access to the car that way as well, so there's nothing to worry about there. As we move along, we come to the back end of the car, which nothing too crazy. You can see we've got our gas filler on this side, some more awesome angular style edges that really fit fit that Lexus silhouette, and then sort of the same thing repeated here with the plastic fenders and various bits going on. As we come around to the back, one of the interesting things to me at least was the fact that we don't have a Lexus badge, but instead we have Lexus spelled out in letters, which I think has a very premium look to it. Obviously this L shape is also something Lexus is trying to use more in their design language to make the cars just stand out that much more in their total presentation of things. And then we have NX 350h all-wheel drive, just reminding us of what model we have and the general aesthetics there. So there you go, that's a quick look at the exterior of the vehicle, but I think it's time to take a look at the most important bits, which would be what's going on inside. So as we move on to the interior of our vehicle, the first thing you'll notice is the really cool color pattern that we have in here that comes as part of the luxury package. The luxury package is essentially an updated version of the premium package, and what we get in here is we have this really cool white and sort of black gray interior, and it comes with these perforated leather seats, and you can see it's even got a fair amount of bolstering on the side here as well. The part that I really enjoy is we have this orange stitching throughout the car as well that really matches the cadmium orange that we have on the exterior of our car. We also have a really unique chevron quilted pattern that's in the center of the seats, and of course these heated and ventilated seats that we get just add a ton of help, especially here in Phoenix during the summer, to make it just cool down that much more while you're using the AC of the vehicle. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hop in here and start taking a look at some of the other technology that's going on in the car and some of the other materials that we use. Our dash is actually made of that soft touch material, which is fairly durable. It's going to age better than plastic, and you don't have to worry about it cracking the same way, but it's also fairly durable to scratch resistance and things like that. One of the really cool things that I like is this trim that we have on each of the front driver's sides. Now this is actually an open pore black wood trim. It feels awesome. It looks awesome, makes you feel like it has this really cool presentation as far as a luxury vehicle goes. Now on top of that, because this is a Lexus, we have a ton of power activated options as well. So both the driver and the passenger seat have 8-way power adjustability, with the driver's seat also getting the benefit of the 4-way adjustable lumbar support, which of course is always nice to have. And these are fairly comfortable seats. I like that the added bolstering is there, even though this isn't necessarily an F Sport or sporty model, for example, but it's nice to have in case you're ever cruising through certain roads. It just feels more secure in the vehicle. We also have the seat memory options, but one of the things you don't see that often is the fact that our leather-wrapped steering wheel is actually adjustable through an automatic adjustable lever on the side to let it go up and down, which is a pretty cool feature. There's still a ton of vehicles, even more expensive than this Lexus, that still use manual adjustment for the steering wheel. So the fact that everything can be so precise with the automatic adjustments is always just a really, really nice touch. Now on top of that, this also has a really driver-centric cockpit. You can notice that even the screen and just general layout of the interior is really focused at the driver, which has a lot of benefits too. And on top of that, you even get a 10-inch heads-up display which sits just in front of the dash that can be managed from the steering wheel, and adds just more of that usability that makes it easier as the driver to focus on driving and not have to worry about navigating or even focusing on things like you even have the street sign pickup, which is a really cool feature that'll tell you what the speed limit is right in front of you. So just in case you miss that sign, the car will also tell you what the speed limit is. Just really cool technology benefits that are here in this essentially spaceship of a Lexus. On top of that, we have some other upgrades. This massive screen is a 14-inch screen here, and it does have a lot of vehicle information. Now, Toyota generally likes to keep a lot of buttons, and this Lexus has less buttons than you would find in a Toyota, but it's actually really easy to use on this touchscreen. I'll say the touchscreen itself is very responsive. Most of your climate controls are also managed through there in terms of using the Lexus Climate Concierge if you want to use the auto, which is generally pretty good at keeping up with whatever's going on with the car, or you can physically adjust everything yourself, and it's pretty easy to adjust things like the AC. You also have some physical knobs next to it as well that feature some digital displays inside of the knobs to tell you what the temperatures are, because you do get dual climate control, which means the passenger and driver each get their own set of controls, which is a pretty cool feature and expected in a luxury car like this. On top of that, you get some other management systems inside the actual control console, whether you want to mess with your music. It also has wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but the cool parts to me are what you get to mess around with the actual vehicle controls. So one of the cool things when you go into the vehicle menu here on the main screen is we get access to our seat controls. Our seat controls are specifically in regards to the back seat. So the back seat has an extra option that gets included as part of our luxury package, and that is those are power foldable back seats. So we have this front button. It says tap the seats you'd like to adjust. I can go ahead and select one seat. Either side doesn't really matter, or you can even click fold all, and as soon as you click fold all, the back seats will now fold down behind you. And the cool part about that is it's not just a one-way trick. Once those seats are folded down, you can go ahead and click raise all, and then the seats will go back up in the rear, which is a really cool feature. And I should also point out that in case you are not in the vehicle or the vehicle's not running, there's actually a button that sits in the back with the hatch open that you can also get access to do the same thing, power fold or power raise the seats as well. So really, that shows some of the engineering depth that Toyota's gone into with this vehicle to make sure everything's functional. Now that's not the only cool thing that's in this vehicle menu. We also have some of our other driving assists that we can get access to, trip information, the energy flow, which actually shows us the hybrid system and when it's charging our battery, which is pretty important, especially if you plan on using the EV mode for the vehicle. Below that is all-wheel drive. Now this car is equipped with all-wheel drive. It's primarily front-wheel drive based, but there's an electric motor on each axle, so there's no need to run a drive shaft from the front to the back, so you don't have to worry about that. That doesn't add any weight, but it still gives you the benefits of all-wheel drive in the event that you run into any traction issues, but it's mostly going to be used on just stop and goes. On top of that, you get your tire pressure and then your general vehicle alerts. I think that's pretty cool. You also have some settings that allow you to adjust some of the various happenings that are in the vehicle, like your awesome sound system, which is phenomenal in this vehicle. The bass sounds fantastic. But more importantly, if you like the cosmetics of your vehicle, you also get the ambient lighting in this vehicle. Now, it's not very bright ambient lighting, so you can't expect it to be visible during the day. It's more so something that comes on to be subtle at night, and you could, of course, adjust the color to whatever your liking is in that instance. Now let's talk about what else we have technology-wise, just looking around some of the various buttons. We also have a 10-inch digital display for what is in front of the driver, for what is essentially our main driving display where you'd find a lot of your gauges. Now that is also adjustable, of course, mixed with the blend of your heads-up display. You can make this a bit more functional as well. It has a fairly simple layout. You can just have your temperature and your fuel along with whatever you decide to display in the middle there, which can be changed. I generally prefer speed, and in this case, because this is the hybrid, maybe you care a bit more about your fuel economy, and that's what you can have up on the screen, but you can also change it to music, whatever you want to change it to, and mess with the up-top display. So you can have a really cool array. You can make the car basically as simple or as complicated as you want, depending on what you're looking for. And I should mention that this car also has the Lexus Safety Sense 3.0. Now what that does is that adds some of our other driving safety features, and all of that is very easily manageable from the steering wheel. One of the things that they did differently for this car is how things are managed. It seems like Lexus wanted to take more of an approach to put the things that you would be more likely to touch more frequently and make those buttons readily available. So while some buttons might have more adjustable displays to get access to certain mids, this is a more broad menu. The menu lets you shuffle through various things. This right side will actually let me manage the displays, and you even get access to some of the safety controls. You have dedicated buttons to both the lane tracking and actually the lane tracing abilities can be adjusted just by the push of these buttons and turned off immediately. So if that's something that you feel like you might use frequently, depending on where you are, you can turn it on and off just to the push of a button, which is pretty unique for this car. And then we do have volume controls on the left side in addition to the knob that's in the middle, but then the left side buttons will also adjust things like skipping songs. You can use the Lexus voice activation features and various things like that. That'll all be adjustable through the left side. So not the most critical, but it's there if you need it. You also still have some of your physical knobs in the background, and then you do have your paddle shifters, which are a little bit interesting in the way they function. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the driving portion, but they're there behind the steering wheel nonetheless, and they are attached, so you don't have to worry about them going anywhere. Now, on top of some other cool features, this car does have a locking gas cap. So on the left side, we actually have a button to open the door and the gas cap unlock button, which is always appreciated. Obviously, you don't want to worry about anybody tampering with your vehicle, and that's just one extra thing that you don't have to worry about. On top of that, as we get to the center console here, we have a lot of exciting bits. So we have some chargers, both a USB Type-C and a standard USB connector, which I really appreciate. A lot of modern cars are switching to only USB Type-C, so it's nice to see the option of both depending on what sort of devices you have and not worry about buying any new chargers for your car. Next to that, we do have this awesome little adjustable knob. This is actually going to be our drive modes. You switch it left and you get eco, switch it right, you get sport, and push it and you get normal. On top of that, we do have our Qi wireless charger that sits here in the middle, which works okay if you have a case on your vehicle. It doesn't recommend that you put anything here for any storage, but you can charge your phone here if you needed to. And then on top of that, we actually have this little cubby here, which I'm not sure you can really use for any storage, but it exists nonetheless. And of course, there's even some hidden storage below our wireless charger that just adds for this really cool area with an extra cigarette lighter spot as well. So a pretty cool feature in our Lexus. Now, on top of that, we can go ahead and get to our cup holders, which sit in the middle here. We have two cup holders. They're not overly large, but they do a decent job of holding anything in place, so you don't have to worry about what might happen in that regard. We have our shifter, which is might work a little bit unique. You might not be used to it, but you will get the hang of it pretty quickly, and so I wouldn't worry too far about that. And a park button, along with a little essentially display that shows you all the various drive modes. Next to that, we have some traction control buttons, our trail mode button, our brake hold, parking brake, and then EV mode, which of course the EV mode in these vehicles isn't overly useful. It's a fairly limited range that's based off your battery charge, and you have to stay below certain speeds. So that's not totally useful, but all of that is there. You can, like I said, make this essentially as complicated or as simple as you want for using your vehicle. You can real dial everything in, take advantage of all the features, or just leave it fairly simple. On top of that, as we move a little bit upwards here, we do have a digital rear view mirror, which is pretty nice and adds some more complexity to the car because you can do a variety of things with that, including tinting the rear view mirror a little bit differently, so that way you're not blinded by the people that are driving behind you at night. On top of that, we talked about our panorama roof up here. So this thing is also powered as well, so I can touch that button just once and you'll see it roll all the way back to have our glass roof covered, which you might be able to see it on camera, all the little perforations that help sort of reflect some of the sunlight so you're not being just totally melted while you're in here. And of course, you can open this up and adjust it as well. So I know that that was a lot, but obviously this is a very technology-rich vehicle, so there's a lot of features that I think are all worth highlighting while we're taking a look. Now, that is a look at the front seat and all of the various tech that's going on in here, but now I'm gonna hop in the back seat so I can talk about what's going on back there. So now I'm sitting in the back seat of our Lexus NX 350h, and I'm about 6 foot for reference, so you can see about where my head clears. Obviously, if you open up your panorama roof, you do get a little bit more headspace. It's not necessarily immediately apparent, but it'll feel certainly more open in the vehicle as well. So if you have older people, adults, whatever, sitting in the back, you may want that. But if you have kids, they're not gonna have any problem. The driver's seat is currently set up for me at 6 foot, and my knees aren't even touching it, which is actually a really big surprise considering the compact nature of this SUV. On top of that, we do have some awesome luxury features. Again, part of the luxury package. These are these power foldable seats that you can fold down if you don't need them, if nobody's sitting back here. But the rear seats actually have heated seats as well. They don't get the ventilated seats, but they are heated. And I think that's a really cool detail. You won't find that in many cars, but it's here nonetheless, along with some more of our open pore black wood is also on the back of each door, and some speakers so they can also bump to the tunes and listen to whatever you're playing and get some of the benefits of the awesome sound quality of the Lexus, which generally has fantastic sound deadening. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention in the front earlier, but I will mention now, is the way the door handles work on this car in the interior. Now, the same thing like I mentioned on the exterior, this car has the electric door poppers, so it's going to be electronically opening the door for you whenever you go to push it. Now, the door handle is intended to be pushed, almost like a button, but it does have the handle fluctuation as well. When you push on it, there's a cool technology that Lexus added. What the technology is it's actually going to check the outside of the vehicle and make sure that when you go to open their door, there is nothing out there that you could be potentially hitting. In their diagram, Lexus likes to use a bicycle, for example. If a bicyclist was riding by you and you go to open your door without looking, maybe they sneak up on you, the door won't open, and then the guy can go by, and then of course you'll then be able to push on the door again and it will go ahead and open. Now, in the event of emergency, there is a manual release. If you look at the door handles, there's actually arrows that go both ways. If you go ahead and pull the door handle twice, that'll activate the manual option, and you can manually open the door that way as well. So in the event that anything happens, there are 2 ways to open that door handle, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck in your vehicle. But that's pretty cool. We do have vents back here. It's fairly comfortable seating, to be honest. I could probably sit back here for a road trip. It's not ideal, but the seats, the way they're set up, has a little bit of a lumbar support in the back that just fits perfectly for me personally, and I could spend a lot of time back here. It's certainly no problem taking people anywhere. You could certainly use this as a family vehicle, I think. But that's a quick look at the interior, which is very luxurious, probably where we're going to spend the most time, just because there's so much technology, and it definitely feels like a luxury vehicle when you're checking out this Lexus. But now I think it's time to take a look at our hybrid powertrain and see what's going on under the hood. All right, so as we go ahead and take a look at what's going on, the best part is this vehicle, of course, has hood struts, so I don't have to hold up the hood, which is always a nice thing and kind of expected in a luxury vehicle. Taking a look, we can generally see a lot of our orange cables right off the bat because this is, in fact, a hybrid vehicle. And then in the true hybrid fashion, which seems to be a regular trend now in the industry, we actually have power is provided by a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, which is set up with the Lexus hybrid drive technology. And what that does is it also adds one electric motor on each axle, so one in the front, one in the rear, like I mentioned earlier. There's no drive shaft for the vehicle, and everything's added that way to get power to all 4 wheels, giving this vehicle all-wheel drive. Now with that, the total power for this vehicle comes to around 240 horsepower, and Lexus does not have an official torque rating for this vehicle, but they do have an official torque rating for the actual standard gas version of this vehicle. But of course, like I mentioned, this is actually rated for double the gas mileage of the standard gas version, so that might encourage which direction you decide to go with your Lexus vehicle. Now on top of that, you'll get it 0 to 60 in somewhere in the neighborhood around 7.2 seconds, which would make this slower than the Toyota Prius, and it has a top speed of around 124 miles per hour, which isn't that high, but it's not like that you're going to be able to do that legally anywhere in the US anyways. So just something to keep in mind if you did have the vehicle fully loaded with 4 adults or more, and then even a lot of stuff in the back, you might feel a little sluggish going up some hills, but that's not totally uncommon for a lot of the vehicles here, but you do get a lot of the advantage of the all-wheel drive for traction purposes as well. So that's a quick look at some of the powertrain, obviously a fairly common version and some different options that are available within the NX series of vehicles, but different than some of the other hybrid powertrains you'll find in other Toyota Lexus vehicles. Okay, so as for the fuel economy of this vehicle, because it is a hybrid, and then of course one of the most important details of this vehicle, now it's rated by the EPA at 41 city and 37 highway with a 39 combined. Now that's pretty good, especially for an SUV, for what you can expect in your driving experience. However, I will say in our time here driving the vehicle here in Phoenix, Arizona, we haven't managed to get out of 30. We've been stuck between 30 and 31 miles per gallon, and that could be for a couple different reasons. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of highway driving. It's kind of what we do here in Phoenix, so it's going to be closer to that 37 number in the first place. But on top of that, we've had the AC and the ventilated seats on full blast the entire time, and obviously we can't really help that. We don't want to die. It's been really over 110 degrees the whole time since we've been testing this vehicle, so that could be one of the big things. So your experience may vary with the vehicle as far as your fuel economy numbers are concerned, and maybe something to consider on your test drive when you go to look at the Lexus NX series of vehicles. But that's our initial testing for it. Even in eco mode, it didn't seem to change too much, but eco mode can of course affect some of the things that happen with AC, and even tune the AC back a little bit to help try and preserve some of your fuel economy, let off earlier, whatever the case. But that was our experience with the vehicle, which is just something to keep in mind. But that 30 mile per gallon number is still higher than what you would get with the non-hybrid version of the vehicle as well. So all some important things to keep in mind. Now, on top of that, because this is a luxury vehicle and maybe used as a commuter or general family vehicle, I think it's time that we go ahead and hop in it and take the vehicle for a drive and give you some of our impressions and some things to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our NX 350h for a drive. So first things first, go ahead and take our CVT automatic transmission, put that in drive, and let's get going. So personally, I find the vehicle works best in normal. One of the benefits to this being a hybrid, obviously you want to kind of manage some of your throttle acceleration, and of course it'll help you do that more if you put the car in eco mode, but I find that it's just fine in normal. You still get the hybrid gauge cluster that Toyota and Lexus like to use that shows you eco and then the power band, so you want to stay within that eco mode, and that'll help you get better fuel economy. But in the event that you're feeling sporty, because this does have independent suspension around the vehicle, you could of course switch it up, get that for the vehicle, and then use that to have a very sporty driving experience. With this vehicle is okay. It's not the greatest, but it's there nonetheless. The most important thing about this vehicle, aside from the hybridness and the focus on gas mileage, would be the actual impressive bits, and that's the fact that this car is incredibly smooth, mixed with all of the added sound deadening in the car. It adds for a really nice luxury experience. If you were looking for a car that was just a pleasure to drive, this is a very nice, doesn't require any extra brain power, especially if you're using some of the other safety and driving assist features that are available on the vehicle. Some of those I personally prefer to turn off. There were some instances where I was okay with the lane tracing capabilities and some of the auto brake that it wants to try and warn you with, but there were some other instances where I felt like this particular car has some of the crossing lane assist, so it'll try to warn you when there's some cars that are further out in traffic that you might be turning into. It'll try to warn you about that, and that's a lot of beeping that is going on in the background of your driving experience. And I personally was not a huge fan of all of the excess beeping, especially because it went off in some instances that I didn't feel were warranted for the car. And then there were even some instances where I felt the lane tracing assist wanted to put me into the curb. So you may have a different experience that may depend on the roads, how freshly painted they are, all those those types of things. But let's get back to the main driving experience for the Lexus, and that is just the general quality. As for the steering feel, you do have this nice leather-wrapped steering wheel with more orange stitching. The steering wheel itself feels fantastic, and the actual driving response from the car is actually pretty decent. Obviously, this is going to have electric power steering, but it's not as over boosted as we would typically come to expect from Toyota. It's got a really nice feel to it. It's not overly direct, but you're not going to have any issues driving this car, and it's going to feel fairly responsive from that point of view. As for the general throttle management with the car, being that this does have regen and the fact that it does have a CVT transmission, you're going to find some interesting characteristics with the gas pedal and the brake pedal that you may not be used to if you haven't driven one of these vehicles before. With the gas pedal, you'll find that sometimes it can feel like a sort of mismanagement of the throttle. You'll feel what is usually referred to as rubber banding with the CVT transmission, and usually that you're trying to gauge some more input and may kind of go back and forth and try to get more reaction out of that CVT transmission to get the car to move a bit more. On top of that, when you bring the vehicle to a stop, the brake pedal will feel a little bit stiff, and that's from the regen for the brakes as well. That regen, of course, is helping to build up and charge that hybrid battery system, and that's going to be able to give you better fuel economy as well while you're driving. So we're now getting onto the freeway because I want to make an example of just how great this car sounds. It's also a shame that we can't share the music experience with you guys. But as we get on here, you can notice that there's really not much of a change in general overall audio for the car, and I think that's really impressive. It's also very smooth. You really don't notice any wheel change over speed bumps and things like that. It's really just a really impressive system, mixed with the heads-up display and the general ease of everything. The navigation can be put on the heads-up display as well. It's really just a fantastic vehicle that allows you to really use it for whatever you want. It's just a general use luxury vehicle. Now on top of that, I did want to talk about the sport mode a little bit because it is a little bit unique for this. This car having a CVT transmission means that it doesn't have gears. The CVT stands for continuous variable transmission. It's essentially a cone with a band that runs up and down the cone, expanding the size so that it can essentially try to keep up with gear ratios having one gear, so to speak. Now, the sport mode gives you these paddle shifters to shift, but you're not actually shifting gears. What you're doing is what Lexus sort of refers to as sport modes. So you have 1 through 6 sport modes, and you change them by using the paddle shifters. Now, 6 being the highest sport mode would actually be the least responsive. So if you want the car to have faster acceleration, so to speak, you would put the car in S1, and then the car will also automatically shift and kind of move its way through the various S gears that exist with the Lexus Sport mode. So kind of exists not really what this vehicle was built for. They do have some F Sport versions if that's more what you're into and you want the added sportiness to the vehicle, but it's in there nonetheless. So kind of some interesting characteristics. The general visibility is okay. You do have a little bit of a blind spot as you get to the rear 3/4 of the car, which are a little bit thicker, but of course, these modern vehicles tend to have thicker metal and bits like that for better rollover protection, so it's hard to complain about your safety and protection of the vehicle with some of the added visibility benefits, but you do get all of your technology package, and I will say the actual mirrors, in terms of pointing out when people are coming up on you, has been fairly easy and fairly good about pointing that out, and it doesn't do it when you're here at low speeds, which is when you don't need it. So that's pretty nice. It's just a general overall nice vehicle. The ventilated seats and AC work okay. They're not the best thing I've ever experienced, but they're in here nonetheless. Obviously a necessity here in Phoenix, and just a general nice usable appliance vehicle with a ton of technology that you can either use all of it if you want to, or just enjoy the simplicities of the luxury benefits of the vehicle. So, in conclusion, let's talk about what's going on with this and kind of where this vehicle lines up. So obviously this is a compact SUV. You could even potentially call it a crossover, sort of a very small profile vehicle. But there are some interesting comparisons within just Toyota, not even comparing some of the other competitor vehicles from other brands. So obviously if you wanted to compare this to the Toyota Prius, you'll get significantly better gas mileage in the Prius, and you still get 4 doors, but you get some less space and less ground clearance. So it depends on what your use case is going to be if you need that up high seating visibility that you get in an SUV like this. But then there's also the conversation about, do you buy the hybrid model? So my answer to that is yes, you should absolutely be looking at the hybrid model. And the reason for that is the hybrid model is only $200 more, at least starting in base price, than the gas engine version. And what you're going to be getting is you're going to be getting similar horsepower numbers. They're both all-wheel drive, so there is no change there. And it's only $200 for a car that is rated at a higher fuel economy from the EPA, which is obviously more important because you're going to be saving money and you're going to be earning back some of that money that you spend on your premium Lexus product. So that's not a bad thing either. I will say, however, you should take those fuel economy numbers with a grain of salt, and your fuel economy might actually vary throughout the season. As I mentioned, using AC as often as we have with the ventilated seats can really take a draw on the overall system, and that can really pull back some of the fuel economy numbers. So something to consider if you live in some place that's hot. Your fuel economy might suffer during summer, but then improve during the winter and other seasons, or should you take it elsewhere. All things to consider when looking at this vehicle, but all in all, it's a fantastic experience that I would generally encourage you to go out and test drive and check out at your local Lexus dealership if you're interested in looking at one of these vehicles. And obviously, they also have some other options. You can go up to the 450 or go down to the 250 model, with this one sitting right in the middle as the 350 option. So that's a quick look at this vehicle. Obviously, the main focus is going to be all of the technology and luxury benefits that you get, which is really going to be found in the interior, which is where you spend most of the time for your vehicle. Now, if you enjoyed this video and could hit that like button for us, we'd really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, Land Air Sea, as always. And if you would consider getting subscribed so you don't miss any future videos like this, we would really appreciate it. If you already own one of these vehicles and want to let us know what you think down below, go right ahead. I'm interested to hear your thoughts and opinions. And of course, let us know if you plan on purchasing one in the future. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.